Hey everyone, Ryan from Ebike Escape, and in this video I'm hopefully going to help you decide what Rad Power Bike model is best for you, so let's get into it. Before we dig into all of the Rad Power Bikes models, if you are looking to purchase a Rad Power Bike and you found this video helpful or you found some of my other content helpful, please consider using the link in the description, which will take you to Rad Power Bikes website before you make your purchase, as it helps me make videos like this one, keeps me reviewing electric bikes. Thanks in advance for your support. So one of the reasons that I wanted to do this video is because I did a similar video almost 2 years ago, which is almost hard to believe. In fact, it was at a time when Ebike Escape didn't even exist. At the time, this YouTube channel was known as the Rad Owners Forum YouTube channel. I am still, however, running the Rad Owners Forum, a great community of Rad Power Bikes owners. So if you're looking for additional insight into Rad Power Bikes customizations, there's just a massive amount of information. RadOwners.com. Be sure to check it out if you're looking at purchasing a Rad Power Bike or you already own one and maybe you want to share some information with others. And there are a lot of other things that have changed in that 2 years. Of course, hopefully the audio quality sounds better, but more importantly, the Rad Power Bikes models. In fact, I get a lot of comments on that old video saying that I'm not including some models, and of course the prices aren't correct, and since then Rad Power Bikes has announced new models. They've raised over $300 million. It's a completely different company at this point. They're quite larger. There's tons of people riding electric bikes in North America these days. I see them much more frequently than I did back when I did that video. Now, as I record this in the beginning of January 2022, Rad Power Bikes just recently announced price changes across some of their models, so I thought it was a good time to re-record. And of course, I have much more experience with many of these models, which I will talk about here in a little bit. Now, I have the bikes all sorted from lowest price to highest price. That's kind of the order that we're going to go through the Rad Power Bikes models, but there's a few things that I kind of wanted to get out of the way, especially if you're new to Rad Power Bikes. So one thing to keep in mind is Rad Power Bikes, all of their models are currently Class 2 electric bikes. That's what they come shipped as. So that means top speed 20 miles per hour, of course, with that throttles. The other thing to keep in mind is that almost all of these models, in fact, all of the models except for one, have 750 watt motors. And when I say 750 watt, that is the peak power that all of these bikes are set at. And in my opinion, that's going to continue. I don't see Rad Power Bikes putting more powerful motors in their electric bikes. Perhaps they will have a Class 3 electric bike at some point, but I really think Rad Power Bikes is focused on that 750 watt peak to keep these bikes both accessible and really stay within the regulation. The regulation is 750 watts, but there's no distinguishing whether they mean 750 watts nominal or 750 watts peak. I think Rad Power Bikes is taking the safe route here, doing 750 watts peak on most of their models. Again, with the exception of the RadMission, which has a 500 watt motor. We'll talk more about that bike here in just a second. The other thing that's common on all of these models is you'll find right-hand twist grip throttles. Now that's something, if you plan to use the throttle a lot, definitely something to consider. The other types of throttles that you'll see on electric bikes are, of course, left-hand thumb throttles. Sometimes the type of thumb throttle can vary between manufacturers, but Rad Power Bikes is using twist grip right-hand throttles, and I personally prefer that to thumb throttles. I just find if you're using the throttle a lot, much more comfortable to use a twist grip throttle. Now there are two resources that I wanted to make you aware of, and both of these will be linked in the description of this video so you can check them out. The first one is Rad Power Bikes, their own comparison chart. You can compare two electric bikes. This page has all of the specs of the models. It's a little bit high level. Again, this video, I'm trying to give you a little bit of context, my experience with these electric bikes, but this chart perhaps can be helpful if you're trying to narrow down the differences between two electric bikes that you're looking at. And I'll just show you quickly how this works. I'll select the RadRover 6 Plus and the RadCity 5 Plus and click Filter. and you can see it just takes it down to the specifications on those two electric bikes. Okay, the second resource that I wanted to make sure that you are aware of, and this is the sizing chart that is on the page of all the specific models. I find that this is a great starting place because it factors in what your leg length is and what bikes might fit you. That's going to be the most important thing. There'd be nothing worse than receiving your Rad Power Bike and it not fitting. You don't feel comfortable. So definitely take a look at this chart. It wants you to measure your real inseam or your leg length, and you can kind of see with this chart here, the orange is you'll be able to pedal and stand over this frame comfortably, and the yellow is you'll be able to pedal comfortably, but may not be able to stand over the frame without it contacting your body. And of course, along the top, we have all of the models, and then there's sections for you will not be able to ride this bike comfortably, or your legs may be too long to get full leg extension while pedaling. So this again is another great starting place. And finally, I wanted to touch on fat tire versus normal tire or skinnier tires, whatever word you want to use. I get so many questions of people asking, what electric bike should I buy? And a lot of times what I'll tell them is you're comparing a fat tire bike to a bike that perhaps has 2-inch tires. So you should kind of decide what style of electric bike you want before, because that's going to drive your decision. So in my opinion, you should be comparing two fat tire electric bikes next to each other as opposed to perhaps a fat tire bike and a more city cruiser style bike. Now, fat tire bikes have become immensely popular. If you just look at the electric bike market right now, almost every company has a fat tire bike option, and that is, of course, because they are so popular. It's definitely, in my opinion, one of the most competitive spaces when you look at a style of electric bike. Fat tire bike, so much competition, so it's great for us consumers because you have so many choices. Now, a few things that I'll just touch on with the fat tires is, of course, fat tires, 4-inch wide, going to be much more capable off-road, going to be more capable in the snow, as I know personally, riding a lot here in Wisconsin in the snow. You can lower the tire pressure. That also adds some comfort. And finally, they do perform better on sand as well. Now, I don't want to dissuade anyone from buying a fat tire electric bike. I like fat tire bikes just as much as the next person. They're super fun, super comfortable. As I just mentioned, they have a little bit more cushion, kind of adds some suspension, and a lot of people just feel more comfortable on them. Fatter tires, more rolling resistance, which means less range compared to a different electric bike with the same battery. And because of the fat tires, they are typically a little less nimble as well. Maybe not something that you'll necessarily notice. It's not like they're hard to turn or anything like that. It's just skinnier tires just feel much more nimble, especially if you're going to be zipping around a city or something like that. So with that, let's dig into the models, and hopefully this information will help you if you're looking at a Rad Power Bike. Again, just a reminder, link in the description to help support eBike Escape. Let's start off with the RadMission. This is one that was definitely not included in my video almost 2 years ago now. So this is the most affordable Rad Power Bike on the market. It launched at a price of $999. It has recently increased in price by $200. Still on the affordable end, in my opinion, especially if you look at other Rad Power Bikes models, though I feel like there's still some other models from other competitors that you can consider at this price. Now, the RadMission is really billed as Rad Power Bike's urban style electric bike. In fact, it looks like a bike that just belongs in the city. So firstly, I really like that the RadMission comes in a mid-step. Here's the mid-step here, as well as a high step. Now, I will say sizing, I currently have the high step model of RadMission, and I feel like at 6 feet tall, I might be kind of at the maximum height. I feel like they made this bike a little bit smaller so it can be accessible to a wider range of riders, even if you are looking at the high step model. And they do have several colors here. I'm a big fan of the steel blue color. It's also offered in the mid step with the orangish color taking the priority. Now, with this being Rad Power Bike's most affordable option, there are definitely some things that other models have that this doesn't. So let's start with the LED display. So the RadMission has an LED display, not to be confused with an LCD display. I'll show you that here in just a second so you can get an idea of what that looks like. This is the LED control panel. Very simple, power button, light button, pedal assist up and down, simple battery indicators, 5 bars for your battery capacity. Now on almost all other models you'll find an LCD display, which obviously provides you a little bit more information, current speed, trip time, and things like that. Now the other thing you should be aware of, while this looks like a very similar size pack that comes on other Rad Power Bikes, it's actually a smaller battery, 10.5 amp hours compared to the 14 amp hour batteries that come on all Rad Power Bikes models. So a little less range, but also a little bit lighter. Now Rad Power Bikes notes a range between 25 and 45 plus miles. I would definitely say between 25 into the mid 30s is definitely going to be doable. I think 45 plus is getting a little bit up there. Perhaps if you're on the lowest pedal assist level and really using a lot of your own effort. Now just a little bit ago I talked about how Rad Power Bikes models, at least most of them, have 750 watt peak motors. This is the one exception. This is a 500 watt motor. Now to get an idea of the power of this motor, be sure to check out our review if you're really considering this electric bike. I personally found it still plenty capable, but of course it is definitely less powerful than the other models. So a couple more things on the RadMission. Even though it is affordable, you still get integrated front and rear lights. Really like that, but you'll notice that there's no other accessories on this bike. But one of the cool things is this is a great entry point price, but if you want to customize your RadMission, you can. We have the fenders over here on the left side. You can get the front rack. There's actually another front rack that you can purchase that can go on the front. That's the $89 one. Then you don't have to buy the basket that goes along with it. I'd highly recommend purchasing the RadMission kickstand. There's other kickstands that work if that one happens to be out of stock. Do a search on the Rad Owners Forum if you're curious about that. And the last accessory that I definitely think is worth considering is the RadMission rear rack at $79. Has pannier hangers and definitely a high quality rear rack. So what I think is really cool about the RadMission is you get a great entry point, but then you can customize as your budget allows. Moving things along, let's talk about the RadMini. So I actually have the RadMini Step Through 2 here, but it also comes in a high step model. In my opinion, the RadMini Step Through is superior. I think it looks a little bit better. Of course, the accessibility is better. I think it looks cleaner as well. I also really like the battery position right there in front of the seat. I think that's going to be a little bit easier to remove than compared to the other high step model RadMini. Now, while there are other models in the Rad Power Bikes fleet that I think work well for shorter riders, I really recommend the RadMini. I think the most. I think the smaller wheels just make it a little bit more accessible. It just feels like a little bit smaller electric bike compared to other models. It still fit me fine, but I think those who are new to electric bikes, I really think the RadMini is a great choice. Now, in my opinion, the RadMini is currently the best value Rad Power Bike because it comes in at $14.99. You get front and rear fenders, you get front suspension, you have the LCD screen, and of course you have the folding functionality. Now that's great for a couple of reasons. One, because you don't have to buy a e-bike rated rack. If you have a little bit of a larger vehicle, you can simply put this in a large tote and put it in the back of your vehicle. Tons of people do that. And so if you plan on going on adventures, that can save you a lot of money buying folding electric bikes. Now, what I like to tell people is just because it can fold doesn't mean you have to use that functionality. If you're just planning to ride around your neighborhood or leave from your house and you never plan to use the folding functionality, don't discount the RadMini. It's just an extra feature. And there's a look at the RadMini all folded up. The other thing is you get 7 speeds, and like all other Rad Power Bikes models, you have the option to add accessories. I think the RadMini really shines when you add a rear rack. That's going to increase the versatility. It has the Thule Maxi window. You could put a child seat on there, pannier bags, And of course, you can also add the front rack if you'd like. And if you are looking to accessorize your Rad Power Bike, be sure to check out our electric bike accessories list. Ton of ideas there as well. That will also be linked in the description. So overall, RadMini, if you're looking for a great balance of price for value, I think you can't go wrong with the RadMini at $14.99. Okay, let's move on to the other electric bike in Rad Power Bikes fleet that's priced at $14.99. This is, of course, the brand new RadRunner 2, just announced late in 2021. I just unboxed mine the other day. Can't wait to get that review out. It appears to be a super fun electric bike to ride, and I'm excited to check it out further. Now, just for a little bit of context, so when Rad Power Bikes announced their RadRunner 1, it was announced at a price of $11.99. Really fit nicely next to the RadMission. Now the RadRunner 2 does have a 14 amp hour battery, so larger capacity than the RadMission, matches the battery capacity found on all of the other models that we're going to talk about here. But it does have the same LED display that is found on the RadMission, and it is also a single speed. That's definitely something to be aware of, though the RadRunner 2 does have a more powerful 750 watt peak motor. Now when you're comparing this to, for instance, the RadMini, you should note that there's no front suspension, no fenders, and of course it is priced the same as the RadMini. And the RadMini, of course, has 7 gears, so perhaps you're comparing those two electric bikes. Now the biggest changes with the RadRunner 2 is they added additional 15 millimeters of foam to the seat, so it's more comfortable than the seat that came on the first generation RadRunner. They also slightly relaxed the head tube angle. That should put you in a little bit more comfortable riding position. The RadRunner 2, besides the black, comes in a really cool forest green. I think this color looks really sharp. Now I really view the RadRunner 2 as more of a moped style electric bike. But what Rad Power Bikes did that was unique, if you look at other moped-style electric bikes, most times there is no seat adjustability, but Rad Power Bikes did something which I think is a little bit ingenious, using a seat post which allows the seat to be raised and lowered. But the magic is when that seat is in its lowest position, it looks more like a moped-style electric bike. If you want that feel, you can match the seats. You can see it there on the left-hand side of your screen, with the RadRunner passenger package. So that's something that's really unique if you're looking at other moped-style electric bikes. The other cool thing that I'll just call out, as far as assembly goes, you can see this chart here, assembly difficulty. This is on the easier end. I totally agree, having assembled this bike recently. Of course, there's no derailleur, no shifting to worry about, so it is very easy to assemble. And one of the cool things about the RadRunner, and in fact the RadRunner Plus, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit, is just the customization that you can do. You can see here they have this little video that shows you all the ways that you can configure this bike. So obviously it comes with none of these accessories, but if you want to, you can add fenders, that rear seat, you can add a child seat. They have a center console where you can add some storage. Of course, front rack, basket, all sorts of things you can do to make this electric bike your own. Now, I was mostly going to go in order with these electric bikes, but I actually want to jump to the RadRunner Plus. The RadRunner Plus is currently priced at $18.99, and I want to call out the differences because if you're looking at the RadRunner 2 versus the RadRunner Plus, there's definitely some things you should think about. So $400 more, what do you get with the RadRunner Plus? So the first thing is you get a 7-speed derailleur. You do get the LCD screen that comes on many of the Rad Power Bikes. Of course, that is an upgrade for $99 if you buy the RadRunner 2. You get front suspension. You can see the premium headlight. You get the premium headlight. I think it looks cooler, doesn't add a significant amount of additional visibility if you're looking to purchase that separately, but it is nice that they include it in the Plus package. And of course, you get front and rear fenders. And finally, you get the included passenger package. That's usually an optional accessory for $100. So in my opinion, the main things are going to be the 7 speeds as well as the front suspension And some of those other things are just kind of bonuses if you're going to use them. For instance, if you're going to put a passenger back here, of course the LCD screen is nice, as well as throwing in the fenders. And don't forget, with the passenger package, you also get the rear pegs, as well as those skirt guards or protectors to protect your rear passenger. So hopefully that gives you a little bit better idea if you're looking at the RadRunner 2 versus the RadRunner Plus. One other thing that I just wanted to call out, we're going to talk about some other Plus models. Now, you should be aware that the other Plus models that we're going to talk about are the newly announced RadRover and RadCity Plus models. Now, don't get those specs confused with the RadRunner Plus, because the RadRunner Plus has mechanical disc brakes, not hydraulic. So it's a little bit confusing right now because Rad Power Bikes announced the RadRunner Plus now a while ago and then came out with these new Plus models that have some different features, different style battery packs. Okay, next I want to talk about the RadCity, the non-Plus model RadCity. So this design has actually been around now for a while. So this is the RadCity Step Through 3, and we also have the RadCity 4. Both are priced at $15.99. This is perhaps the models that haven't seen a lot of price fluctuations. I feel like they used to be at $14.99 and then they raised them to $15.99, and they've kind of been around this price point for quite some time. While I really like the RadCity design, especially when we talk here in a little bit about the RadCity 5 Plus model, I'm a little bit hesitant on this model because I feel like it's probably going to be refreshed. This is the last two models that have the old direct drive motor. Still 750 watt peak motor, actually has regenerative braking in it. It's the same motor that was on our original 2018 RadWagon. Now, regenerative braking may sound like a really cool feature, but I personally have found that it didn't add a significant amount of range, so definitely not a selling point in my opinion. And the other thing is these are lower torque motors than the ones that are coming on current Rad Power Bikes models. So as far as motor performance on the RadCity models, 40 Newton meters of torque. In comparison, the RadRover, the original non-Plus model RadRover, has 80 Newton meters of torque. It's not that these motors aren't capable. In fact, my wife and I used to ride around our city on our 2018 RadWagon with this motor, but if we were going up a significant hill, we were definitely putting in some of our own effort. So that's something to be aware of. I think it's still a great design, but my personal belief is this might be the next models that get refreshed, I think with a new motor. But if you can still snag a good deal on the RadCity model and you don't want to spend the extra for the Plus model, I still think it's a great bike. Really like the step through, again here, plenty accessible. And what makes the RadCity models unique is the integrated rear rack comes with the bike. Of course, you have fenders as well, and you also have an adjustable stem with these more swept back handlebars that put you in an upright riding position. Next, let's move on to the RadRover, the electric bike that started it all for Rad Power Bikes. This is one that's hard not to recommend because so many people have opted for this electric bike. So fat tires, 4-inch tires on the RadRover 5. And something I didn't call out when I was talking about the RadMini and the RadRunners is Rad Power Bikes has decreased the width on some of those models in recent years. So you'll either find 3-inch tires or 3.3-inch tires on some of those other models. And I personally find that the 3.3 or 3-inch tires is kind of the best of both worlds. You get some additional comfort for the tires being a little bit wider, but they're not so wide like the RadRover. Of course, if you're going to be taking your electric bike off-road, you definitely want to consider the RadRover, but just note that this is the model that has the 4-inch wide tires. Now, something that's really hard to understand looking at the website, these RadRovers are very large electric bikes, so be sure to watch some reviews. I recently reviewed the new RadRover Plus. You can check out that video if you're interested, but definitely a large electric bike. Of course, you get a lot of the same features that come on the other models that we talked about: integrated lights, 14 amp hour battery, front and rear fenders, and of course the LCD screen. I personally find the suspension on these RadRovers is actually pretty good. In fact, I'm going to show you the RadRover step through one. You can actually check out the video I did on that a while back. That is one of my older videos. I really like when Rad Power Bikes came out with this, the accessibility of this step through. You can see it's going to be much easier for a shorter rider to hop on, so be sure to check out the step through version. It also comes in black. And I think Rad Power Bikes really nailed it with this design, especially considering that they opted to continue to use the external battery on this model. And if I'm not mistaken, the RadRover Step Through 1 was first released in early 2020, so perhaps we'll see an update to this bike. Again, really hard to know, but it has been almost 2 years. So that's the RadRover and the RadRover Step Through 1. Let's move on to my favorite model. We have this bike in our garage. It is my personal favorite electric bike, the RadWagon 4. This has gone through a few different price changes at this point. It currently stands at $19.99, so $2,000. In my opinion, it was a little bit easier to recommend when it was cheaper because it can literally do everything. It was an incredible value. Now I feel like Rad Power Bikes has this price where it really only makes sense if you're going to use some of the cargo features that are found on the RadWagon. So despite the fact that it is currently priced at $2,000, you're simply not going to find a lot of cargo electric bikes at this price, which still makes it an incredible value. Of course, prices are increasing across the electric bike industry. But where the RadWagon really stands out is using it as a car replacement, as a minivan replacement. This is the bike that really started it all for my family and I. You can see in this short little clip here, the 2 child seats that you can put here. You can put 2 pads for 2 passengers. You can use the caboose to keep your kids safer in the rear there. They have a Conestoga, which I did a video on, that kind of surrounds your child in this windproof screen type accessory. So we can extend our riding season here in Wisconsin. You can still put on the front basket and the racks fit on the back, and you can put panniers. So it's a super versatile electric bike, can hold tons of cargo, has the 750 watt peak motor. And when Rad Power Bikes came out with the RadWagon 4, they added this telescoping seat post, which means that this bike sits a little bit lower to the ground. It has a very unique size of tire. These tires are actually 22 by 3 inch. I talked a little bit earlier how I feel kind of that the 3-inch wide tires are really the sweet spot. You can add passenger pegs, of course, as well. It has the skirt guard that comes installed, and the handlebars are really easy to adjust. If, for instance, you have a family where multiple people are riding the bike, you can simply flip that section up and adjust the handlebars closer to you. And in fact, my brother liked the RadWagon so much, he actually went ahead and bought one for himself. He went ahead and did the controller upgrade, so he kind of has a super powered RadWagon. You can check out our videos on that if you're interested. It is just crazy powerful when you use some of these third-party accessories. So if you have kids, the RadWagon is a no-brainer. You can see Rad Power Bikes has some great pictures here showing how versatile of an electric bike that this is. We're gonna have to add a second Thule Up Maxi seat here in just a little bit with a baby on the way. So definitely check out the RadWagon 4 if you plan to use your electric bike as a replacement for a vehicle, going grocery shopping, hauling the kids. Comes in orange, which is probably my favorite color, but we personally have this white model. It's kind of a pearl white, looks really cool as well. So finally, let's move on to the Plus models that Rad Power Bikes announced this fall. So we have the RadRover 6 Plus, and then we also have the RadCity 5 Plus. Both of these bikes I have ridden extensively, and so I have a really good idea of how these bikes feel. Now, the Rad Plus models are really Rad Power Bikes' first foray into more premium electric bikes. They have kind of really solidified themselves as a value-priced e-bike brand, but when they announced these models, they kind of let everyone know that they are going to go up market as well. And in my opinion, these bikes are still pretty fairly priced. So both of them are priced at $2,000, and I'm kind of lumping these together because they are so similar, except for instance, the fat tires. Of course, lots of similarities between the RadRover and the RadRover 6 Plus as far as the fat tires go. But the biggest changes, if you're looking at the Plus models, and again, excluding the RadRunner Plus, is that these come with hydraulic brakes, which feel really nice. definitely an upgrade that I prefer. I think that the Tektro Aries brakes that Rad Power Bikes is using on all their other models perform quite well, but it's one of those things that you don't really know what you're missing with hydraulic until you really feel them. So definitely, if your budget allows, consider the Plus models. The hydraulic disc brakes alone are definitely worth the upgrade. You also have a semi-integrated battery, so the battery isn't quite 100% integrated into this frame. They kind of went with the semi-integrated look, but it's really nice to hold that battery with one hand. It pops out as opposed to slide off. I really like that. Definitely a lot more user-friendly. And of course, you have the new dual LCD displays. So you have one display in the center and one on the side. Again, I went through in depth these displays when I reviewed these electric bikes. I actually figured out how to override the top speed, which I personally don't recommend, and Rad Power Bikes doesn't either, but you can check out that video if you are interested. And the other thing that Rad Power Bikes did with the RadRover 6 Plus is they used a new motor which is more capable climbing hills. I was actually really impressed with the RadRover climbing hills. So if you check out our review, you'll be able to get a sense of just how powerful this electric bike is going throttle only up a hill. RadRover priced at $16.99. $300 more. I actually think that's a pretty good value. Of course, you also get the front and rear fenders, integrated front and rear light as well. It is now integrated into the rear of the fender. And the paint jobs on the Plus models are a little bit more unique, a little bit more sleek looking. This model has the gray and the black. Looks really sharp in my opinion. And of course, you can outfit your RadRover just like every other model, exactly how you want. So again, for adventures, highly recommend the RadRover, and I have to show you the RadRover 6 Plus because I really like what Rad Power Bikes did here, making, again, a super accessible fat tire electric bike. And this one comes in white as well. Looks really sharp in my opinion. And if we look at the size chart here, here's the RadRover step through one in the middle there. You can see the RadRover 6 Plus step through. You can see that they definitely made some changes to the frame, that it is more accessible for shorter riders. You can see that seat tube there, just a little bit shorter. So highly recommend the step through variation. It's just going to be much more easy for you to hop on. I haven't said this yet in this video, but step through electric bikes are not girls' bikes. You should purchase the electric bike that's going to be the most comfortable for you so you get out and use it and you're comfortable. Now along the same vein, we have the RadCity 5 Plus and the RadCity 5 Plus step through. So they actually just increased the price of this to $200. I thought it was an absolute steal at $17.99. Now it's currently priced at $19.99, matching the price of the RadRover. But what's really nice is you get the integrated rack. It is super sturdy. You don't have to go and purchase the rear rack like you would, for instance, need to on the RadRover. Has the Thule maxi window if you want to put a child back there. Pannier hangers. Just overall, really like the rear rack. And of course, the accessibility, not only on the step-through model, but also on this high-step model. I think it can accommodate a large amount of riders based off of the height range. We'll take a look at the size chart here in a little bit. But they have an adjustable stem here, swept back handlebars. You can see these people riding. They're in a little bit more upright riding position. And here's the size chart here. On the right, we have the RadCity 5 Plus and the RadCity 5 Plus step through. So some other things to consider with the RadCity 5 Plus, it is the most efficient model in the Rad Power Bikes fleet. It has 2-inch wide tires, going to feel really nice riding around in the city. Of course, we have hydraulic disc brakes as well, the dual LCD screens that I already talked about with the RadRover. There's a look at that motor. Rad Power Bike shares that it climbs hills 40% faster than the RadCity 4, 275-pound capacity on that rear rack. So if you're looking for an electric bike that feels like a normal electric bike or a normal non-electric bike, definitely check out the RadCity 5 Plus. Definitely a lot of similarities compared to what perhaps you might already be riding. These are 27.5-inch wheels, going to roll really nice on pavement. And both my wife and I have been riding our RadCity 5 Plus the last several months, and we've been using it to take to the gym. It was really nice to put our Thule Yup Maxi seat on the back of there because the RadWagon, of course, is a little bit more heavy. So this bike is definitely more nimble. The RadCity 5 Plus, versatile city electric bike, highly recommend. I was super impressed. So those are all the Rad Power Bikes models. We talked about the RadMission all the way at $11.99, and we went all the way up talking about the new Plus models at $19.99. Again, I would love to hear your feedback in the comments section. If you own one of these electric bikes, go ahead and help out others. Give your opinion of what one you chose and why. It's not just my opinion. That's why I really like having the Rad Owners Forum and such a great community here on YouTube. I get lots of information from others who either agree with me or provide an additional perspective. Again, a link to Rad Power Bikes website in the description below. If you use that link, it really helps support me. I will also put some of our resources down there as well. Our electric bike accessories list, top e-bike brands page, and finally, our electric bike discounts code page, where I track all the deals on the electric bike brands that I follow. And of course, I have reviews of several of these electric bikes. I follow Rad Power Bikes the closest, so be sure to subscribe if you're looking for more on Rad Power Bikes. More Rad Power Bikes reviews coming here shortly, accessory videos on the RadRover, on the RadCity, and a lot more on the RadRunner 2 and the RadRunner Plus. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.